On December 12, 1942, a Boeing Troop B-17F Flying Fortress, serial number at 41-24585, belonging to the 303rd Bomb Group, 360th Squadron of the U.S. 8th Air Force, made history in a way no one expected. After taking part in a daylight bombing raid over Rouen, France, the aircraft was damaged by German fighters and flak on its return journey to England. Running low on fuel and unable to maintain altitude, the pilot made the only choice left, an emergency landing in German-occupied France, near the town of Melun, south of Paris. The bomber's crew, realizing capture was imminent, attempted to destroy the aircraft by setting charges and removing key instruments. But local German troops arrived within minutes. Their arrival marked the first time the Luftwaffe obtained a fully intact, flyable B-17, an aircraft that had already become a symbol of America's growing air power. The captured bomber, known by its crew as Wolf Hound, was of immense technical value. Up to that moment, German intelligence had only examined wreckage or incomplete remains of downed fortresses. This one was nearly pristine. The engines were damaged but repairable. The frame was intact, and even the radio, gun turrets, and armor layout could be studied. Under heavy guard, Wolf Hound was dismantled and transported by rail to Leeuwarden Airfield in the Netherlands, where a Luftwaffe maintenance unit began a full restoration. German engineers replaced the damaged landing gear, repaired control, cables, and overhauled the 4 Wright Cyclone engines using parts from other wrecks. Within 2 months, the aircraft was ready for flight once again. By March 17, 1943, painted in German markings and coded DL+XC. The B-17 took off from Leeuwarden for its first test flight. Its destination was the Luftwaffe Test Center at Rechlin, northern Germany, the same airfield where Germany tested all new aircraft and captured enemy technology. Rechlin's officers understood the importance of this acquisition. They had heard endless reports of American bomber formations inflicting growing damage on German targets despite heavy fighter opposition. Until now, the fortress had been an enigma, large, heavily armed, but somehow able to fight off waves of interceptors. The captured aircraft offered the first chance to measure why. The B-17 was subjected to a full performance evaluation. Engineers studied its turbo-supercharged engines, its fuel management system, and the oxygen equipment that allowed crews to operate at high altitudes. The Germans were especially intrigued by its defensive layout, an interlocking web of machine gun positions that could cover almost every angle. For comparison, the Luftwaffe's own bombers, like the Heinkel Hu 1111 or Dornier Du 215, carried minimal armament and relied on speed or escort protection. The American design philosophy was entirely different. The aircraft itself was a defensive weapon. Each crew member, from nose to tail, had a gun station that contributed to the formation's collective survival. The German officers inspecting Wolf Hound realized that the B-17 was not simply a bomber. It was a system. Its strength came from coordination, discipline, and overlapping firepower. Even before it flew under German colors, the captured plane had begun to change how the Luftwaffe thought about the enemy in the sky. Once at Rechlin, Wolf Hound became the centerpiece of an extensive testing program. Flight evaluations were led by the experienced Luftwaffe test pilot Hans Werner Lerche, a man who had already flown and assessed nearly every captured Allied aircraft, from Spitfires to P-40s. Lerche's first flight in the B-17 revealed what Allied crews had long known. The aircraft was not fast, but it was astonishingly stable and forgiving. Even when 1 or 2 engines were shut down, it maintained control with minimal trim changes. In long climbs, its turbo superchargers provided power where German bombers struggled for breath. But what fascinated the Luftwaffe most were its defensive capabilities. Using mock engagements with friendly fighters, the test team analyzed how the bombers' guns could cover approach paths. Camera gun footage and visual observation confirmed what many German pilots already suspected. The B-17's defensive zones overlapped so thoroughly that any single fighter attack exposed the pilot to multiple streams of fire. The analysis detailed a striking conclusion. A lone B-17 was dangerous. A group of them, flying in tight formation, was nearly impenetrable. That revelation aligned with combat reports from the front, where German fighter wings Jagdgeschwader 1, 2, and 26 had suffered heavy losses attempting to engage bomber boxes head-on or from the rear. The Rechlin findings reached the Luftwaffe's high command within weeks. New tactical directives were issued urging pilots to abandon single, rearward attacks and instead coordinate mass strikes. The goal was to overwhelm a formation from multiple angles at once. Another innovation emerged directly from the tests, the introduction of the True 21 cm Werfergranate 21 rocket. Adapted from a ground-launched weapon, mounted under the wings of fighters like the FW-190 Hugh and BF-109 Ju, these rockets could be fired from over a kilometer away, bursting amid bomber formations to disrupt their structure before gunfire could take effect. Rechlin's engineers also noted vulnerabilities. The nose of the early B-17F model had limited forward coverage. Cheek-mounted guns offered only partial protection, leaving a gap in the 12 o'clock direction. This discovery validated the tactics, pioneered by Major Egon Meyerdina of Jagdgeschwader 2Q, who developed the high-risk head-on attack method: dive toward the bombers from the front, fire a burst, and peel away vertically before the gunners could respond. However, the Luftwaffe's advantage was short-lived. By late 1943, the Americans introduced the B-17G, equipped with a powered chin turret Eorn, carrying twin 50-caliber guns that closed the forward gap completely. The weapon layout became nearly spherical, and head-on attacks grew increasingly lethal for German pilots. Meanwhile, Wolf Hound left Rechlin and joined Kampfgeschwader 200 KG 200, the Luftwaffe's secret operations unit. Repainted with the new code A3 Plo, it was used for clandestine purposes: test flights, recognition training, and possibly decoy missions. Some records suggest it was shown to Luftwaffe fighter groups as a teaching tool, demonstrating where not to attack Allied bombers. For the pilots who flew it, the impression was unforgettable. The fortress's resilience, range, and firepower symbolized an industrial strength that Germany could not match. As one officer reportedly said after his final test flight, "This airplane is not fast, but it has more guns than courage can face." The lessons learned from Wolf Hound shaped the Luftwaffe's next phase of air defense, influencing both the Sturmgruppen concept, heavily armored FW-190 units for close-range assaults, and the widespread deployment of air-to-air rockets. By 1944, the air war over Europe had become a brutal contest of attrition. The Luftwaffe's new tactics, mass attacks and rocket barrages, inflicted heavy losses on Allied bomber formations, but the cost to Germany's fighter units was unsustainable. Every time the Luftwaffe adapted, the Americans countered. The addition of long-range escort fighters, especially the P-51 Mustang, transformed the dynamic. Fighter escorts could now stay with the bombers from takeoff to target and back, eliminating the window of opportunity the Germans once exploited. Still, the respect gained from testing the captured fortress never faded. German pilots who had flown Wolf Hound understood that the American advantage lay not only in machines but in organization. Crews were highly trained, missions were coordinated with precision, and formations were designed like moving fortresses, each protecting the other. The evaluation at Rechlin had given the Luftwaffe a technical understanding of the B-17's strengths, but it also revealed a psychological truth. The Americans were fighting an industrial war, built on teamwork, discipline, and resources that Germany could not equal. As 1944 turned to 1945, the Luftwaffe's capacity to challenge the Allied air offensive collapsed. Fuel shortages, pilot losses, and the destruction of aircraft production facilities made sustained defense impossible. By the time Germany surrendered in May 1945, the once feared Luftwaffe was a shadow of its former self. Wolf Hound did not survive the war. Evidence suggests it was destroyed in an Allied bombing raid near Oranienburg in April 1945, yet its legacy endured. The tests conducted with that single captured bomber influenced the design of defensive systems, attack tactics, and even post-war thinking about air power. After the war, surviving Luftwaffe officers often spoke candidly about the aircraft. In memoirs and interviews, several admitted that the B-17 represented something Germany never fully achieved, a mass-produced weapon that combined technology and teamwork into a single system. One German engineer summarized it best. "We saw that an aircraft could be strong not by armor or speed, but by coordination." The B-17 taught us that lesson. For historians, the story of Wolf Hound is more than a technical curiosity. It illustrates how innovation and organization can reshape warfare. The B-17 was not the fastest or most advanced aircraft of the war, but it embodied a philosophy of collective defense that made daylight strategic bombing possible. Even its enemies admitted that flying against it required both skill and luck, and sometimes neither was enough. When Luftwaffe test officers said they had never seen defensive firepower like it, they weren't exaggerating. They were acknowledging a machine that changed the sky itself. End of Section 3. 1,000 words. YouTube description, safe for upload. Title: Luftwaffe officers flew a captured B-17, then admitted they'd never seen defensive firepower like it. Description: In December 1942, the Luftwaffe captured an intact American B-17 flying fortress after it made an emergency landing in occupied France. Tested at Germany's Rechlin Air Base, this captured bomber, nicknamed Wolf Hound, gave the Germans their first detailed look at America's powerful heavy bomber. What they discovered shocked them: an aircraft so heavily armed and coordinated that it forced the enemy to change its entire air defense strategy. This video explores that remarkable story and how it shaped the air war over Europe.